Let's go ahead and solve homework exercise number 18 from section 3.7 homework exercises. It says translate the argument into symbolic form, then determine whether the argument is valid or invalid. All right. If it was busy enough on the road, they would have taken the back route. It is not, so they did not. All right, well, they're starting out with P here, so all these, so if it was busy enough on the road, we'll say that's P, they would have taken the back route if then. It starts with an if, so we know it's a then statement, so right arrow. And we'll say Q is they would have taken the back route. P is the road was busy enough. It is not, meaning it is not busy enough, so it is not P. Okay, so they did not take the back route. So then that would be, the conclusion would be the negation of Q. Okay, now on page 186 of your textbook, they have 4 valid and 4 invalid. This form right here is fallacy of the inverse. Okay, so when you have if P then Q, not P, therefore not Q, when you have this argument following this pattern, it's a fallacy, meaning the argument is invalid. So we don't have to do a truth table. We can just match it on page 186 of the textbook to one of the invalid forms, so we definitely know the argument is invalid. If you needed to do a truth table, you would do if P then Q and not P, does that imply an if then negation of Q? And your last line will have at least one false, meaning it is not a tautology, which means the argument is invalid. Okay? So fortunately, we don't have to do a truth table. We can match it to one of the forms, and we know it's definitely invalid. So the first thing was, we matched it. It was if P then Q, negation of P then negation of Q, right? So that was the first part. And then we already said it matches one of the invalid forms. So the argument is definitely invalid. Very good. Let's look at number 19. Similar problem, translate the following into symbolic form and determine whether it is valid or invalid. If the weather alarm sounds, which is P, right? Use P, the weather alarm sounds, so P, if, that's, so it's an if then, so a right arrow, there will be a storm. Q represents there will be a storm. There is no storm, so obviously that's the negation of Q, right? No storm. Therefore, the weather alarm does not sound, which is not P. Okay? Now, this is on, again, page 186 of your textbook. This form matches one of the top ones in the top row, which are all valid. This is the law of contraposition. If you've got an if then, if P then Q, and you got the negation of that one, the then part, then you can conclude the negation of the if part, not P. So again, it matches one of the valid forms on page 186 of the textbook, exactly this form right here. Okay, so we've got, definitely that is a valid argument. Again, we don't have to use a truth table. All right, so we've got, the format was what? If P then Q, or right arrow, right? Q, and then we had the negation of Q, therefore conclude the negation of P. That was the format, and again it matches one of the valid forms, so it's definitely a valid argument. Very good. Let's go to number 20. In addition to the forms of invalid arguments, fallacious reasoning occurs in everyday logic. Match the example below with one of the fallacies. Each of my 3 dogs got into a trash and none of them got sick. Therefore, so dogs can eat anything and not get sick. Okay, fallacy of ignorance, claiming a statement is true because it has not been proven false. Let's keep on reading. Fallacy of inappropriate authority. There's really no, he's not saying it because he's an authority. fallacy of emotion, pity, force, I don't think there's anything in there. How about fallacy of a hasty generalization? Occurs when the inductive generalization is made on the basis of a few observations. Just 3 observations, right? And none of them got sick, so they're saying dogs can eat anything, but 3 observations is a very few observations, right? Maybe if we had 10, 20 dogs, at least some of them would have gotten sick. So definitely I think we're going to say it's the fallacy of a hasty generalization. Very good. Let's look at 21. Again, in addition to the forms of invalid arguments, fallacious reasoning occurs in everyday logic. Match the example below with one of the fallacies. I missed class, but I know you won't kick me out because my grandmother was in the hospital and I went to visit her. Okay, questionable cause. There's not a causation there, right? One thing doesn't cause another. He's not saying it caused. He's just making an excuse. Fallacy of ignorance. He's not claiming ignorance. How about fallacy of emotion? Consists of appealing, pity, force, right? He wants you to feel sorry for him because he was visiting his grandmother in a hospital, okay? So I went to visit her, so you won't kick me out, kind of pity, or kind of saying a forceful argument. So going on emotions, fallacy of emotion. All right, very good. This concludes this session for homework exercises 3.7, and this includes all the problems are completed now. This is your math teacher, Dr. Swears. I hope you found these videos helpful. If you have more questions, send me an inbox in the Canvas course through the FGCU portal. Again, thank you for watching these videos. I hope you found them helpful.